Hello there. Thanks for joining me. I am Dr. Jen, and this is My Life as a Landlord. I am so pleased that you're educating yourself and joining for today's show. Recently, in episode 151, I asked Dan Dyble and Karen Hall to create a roundtable discussion with me centered around a Toastmasters meeting. As a former Toastmaster, and Dan and Karen are current members of a Toastmasters club called Money Matters, I invited them to a part 2 of that discussion, and I suspect there's going to be more parts after this based on the first one. In the meeting that I was in, Karen had created 15 discussion spurring questions about rentals for a quick impromptu speech designed to make the speaker think on their feet. Back with me for part 2 of the discussion is Dan and Karen. Welcome back.
Good to
Thank
be
you.
back.
Now, Dan, you've been on the show before. You are not a stranger to public speaking. You're not a stranger to My Life as a Landlord. You were on the show before, episode 44, talking about landlords making the decision whether or not their rental should be long-term or short-term. Karen, this is your second podcast episode. Yay. But you're
It
no
is.
stranger to speaking either. Karen, if I can put you on the spot, if you'll remind everybody, what exactly is Toastmasters?
Toastmasters is an international organization that has clubs around the world. So where anybody is, they can go and look up and find a club in their area. It's an opportunity to meet other people who are wanting to improve their communication skills, wanting to improve their leadership skills, and wanting to have fun. Because each meeting, typically, there is a lot of laughs in it in some way.
Love it. Thank you so much. Now, when I was at the Money Matters Club recently and presented checkers versus chess about rentals recently, Karen, you had created an impromptu list of what is called table topics. And can you remind everybody what table topics is?
Table topics is a portion of the meeting which helps us to improve our impromptu speaking. We're all put into situations where somebody will come up and ask a question or something, and we're not sure how to answer. Table topics teaches us how to deal with those situations. You're provided with a question and asked to provide a response, which is like a mini speech with an opening, a body, and a conclusion. Speak between 1 and 2 minutes. This is an excellent skill to learn for somebody who might be going for job interviews because it's teaching you skills on how to answer those questions that you weren't expecting.
Mm-hmm.
And every time that you speak at Toastmasters, you do get evaluated. So you'll get a micro evaluation for these very short speeches. And that really gives you feedback on what's your body language like? How are you presenting yourself in a moment of stress? How well are you doing? Is your voice modulation appropriate? And so on. And it's just really good practice at speaking long enough and short enough at the same time.
Amazing. I love it. Well, we got through 3 questions in the section called Ethical Dilemma in part 1. So if you missed that, listener, if you missed that episode 151 is riveting. It really talked a lot more about Toastmasters and table topics. So go visit that one in the library. Today, we're going to talk about rights and responsibilities when it comes to rentals. And who wants to take the first question? We'll do it table topics style. What do you think?
Sounds good.
Okay.
I can take the first question this time.
Okay, Dan, can you give her the lights? Now, Dan, would you please explain what the lights mean? And in this case, it's the backgrounds, but please.
Yeah, so at Table Topics, everything is timed and everything's evaluated. So just now I'm going to talk about the timing part. When we're giving a speech, as we approach the end of the speech, there are signals given to the speaker to enable them to be aware that they're drawing to a close and that it's time for them to be able to wrap up whatever they're saying. And the way that we signal that when we're online is with our backgrounds. So this table topics are supposed to be speaking at least 1 minute, but not more than 2. Now, we're not enforcing the end in this podcast, but we are going to use the lights just to give people a sense for what it's like. So at 1 minute, my background will go green. At 1 minute, 30 seconds, it's going to go yellow. And when her 2 minutes is up, it'll go red. And I'm getting kind of funky background effects right now because of a glitch in my computer, but we'll just live with it today.
All good. So if you're watching this, listener, if you're watching this at YouTube at My Life as a Landlord, you'll see, but typically we'll try to say the word, whoever the timer is, they'll say the word, they'll say yellow or green or red so that you can hear it audibly as well. Okay, Karen, you're going first? Okay. Oh, you're on mute.
I'm sorry, the dog had barked. So I
No,
put
that's
it on
fine.
mute. So,
We love
yes.
dogs. That's okay. That's okay. All right. So the first question, the question for you, Karen, when you're ready, who has more responsibility in maintaining a property, the landlord or the renter?
Who has more responsibility in maintaining the property? The landlord would, I believe, would have the most responsibility, but that does not negate what the tenant should be responsible for. The tenant should be responsible for general maintenance around the house, around the residence or condo or apartment or whatever they're in. Changing light bulbs, cleaning out the filters on the air supply things, things, just basic general maintenance that anybody would be responsible for. But when you get into more difficult maintenance, making sure that the plumbing is working properly and needs to be repaired, regular painting so that it looks neat and tidy, yard maintenance. Now, yard maintenance is debatable because in a lot of cases, if you supply the tenant with a lawnmower, they should be doing the mowing of the lawn and that on a regular basis. But some landlords won't do that, and therefore it should be their responsibility to maintain the mowing of the lawn and keeping it looking suitable. So it's a balance between the two. The tenant should be responsible for general maintenance around the house that they would do anywhere that they're living to make it comfortable for themselves. Cleaning, general light maintenance, changing light bulbs, tightening screws, cleaning things like that. But the major maintenance is the landlord's responsibility because that's what the tenant is paying for. They shouldn't be out of pocket to do something to make the place look better for the landlord's benefit because it's the landlord that benefits them. So those are my comments on it.
Karen, great answer. I want to respond, but at first I have to laugh because for those of you who just did not see that on YouTube, at My Life as a Landlord, you've got to pull up this episode because what Dan just did with the backgrounds, it didn't actually go the background, it was on him. And so he had a green mustache and a green beret, and then everything else was green, and the other colors followed suit. So that was very entertaining. Sorry, Karen, if I was laughing while
No,
you
no,
were
it
answering.
kind of threw me for a minute there when
Yeah.
the green mustache.
But you did make a great point, and I want to respond as well. I think there is a difference between maintaining and providing. The landlord is the main provider of a safe and comfortable place that is, has running hot and cold water, has heat, it has all electricity, all the different things that are required that is basic health and safety issues for the tenant. But just like a landlord cannot deduct anything more than normal wear and tear, and I say that in quotes, from a security deposit, the tenant has to help maintain the normal wear and tear. And so if that includes lawn maintenance, if that includes housekeeping, pest control is another issue. We've had issues in the past in Hawaii where we've had tenants complain of cockroaches. And one of the main reasons that cockroaches get in is because it's a warm climate and they leave food out. And so it's like, okay, it is a give and take. It requires good communication. We've also had rentals in northern British Columbia where snow removal is a problem. So that in those instances, of course, we don't do that on Maui, but in those instances, we have to say who is doing snow removal. In fact, even our rentals in Paul River, we take care of snow removal. Why? Because there's hardly any snow there. But that does happen in certain locations, and you have to know who is going to salt the sidewalks, who is actually going to shovel the way to get to the mailbox, for instance. And so it's a two-way street. The landlord is providing the safe location that is the house or the apartment, but the renter has to still maintain it. And there is a normal wear and tear standard that they have to maintain. So I agree with you. I just wanted to throw a couple more aspects in. What do you think, Dan?
I have a slightly different view. Certainly, the structure of the building and the maintenance of the building itself, the plumbing, electrical, things like that, is definitely the landlord's job. When you get to consumables like light bulbs and things like that, to me, you're pushing towards, well, I'm not going to be paying for their bath soap and things like that as a landlord, but you do want to be specific. And for me, the best place to determine this is in your rental agreement. Put it in and just be really specific. So I'm quite happy as a landlord to make sure that the grass is cut. But your rent is going to reflect the fact that I have to send somebody around to do that. From the landlord's perspective, that way I know it's getting done and I'm not going to get a notice from the city charging me with things. I know that it's going to be done to a standard that keeps the aesthetic of my building appropriate for my neighborhood. Because I like to have clean properties. I like to have things look good. And if you don't know how to cut grass, also, who's supplying the mower? Most renters don't have a mower. So if I'm supplying the mower, do they really know how to maintain the mower? Well, is it their job to maintain? So it gets really complicated that way. My preference is electric mowers, which means lower maintenance, but that's a whole nother thing. So for me, just being really explicit. So as a tenant, when I rent, I say who's going to do, or I'm willing to do this, and this. But in exchange for that, I expect that to be reflected because I'm taking concern and cost away from the landlord. Then I really want to be compensated for my time and effort at things that are beyond my normal consumer part, like the soaps and things like that. I have rented. I have a place that I rent when I travel in Las Vegas, and everything's handled. They come in, they clean once a week, they supply the dishes. It's a complete unit. It's already furnished and everything. Everything is done for me. And if I think something's noisy or there's a light bulb that needs, I give a quick call and they send their maintenance team over. So it really, for that, I pay a commensurately high. But when I'm in Vegas, I'm at conferences. I'm there for business and I don't want distractions and I do want everything working.
And you're not there to mow lawns.
I am not mowing a lawn at 40 degrees C, 130 degrees.
No,
Not
just
getting there.
No, I get it. Excellent. Shall we move on to the next question?
Please.
Perfect. Dan, you want the next one or you want me to take the next one?
I'm happy to go up.
Okay. So here's the next one. Karen, are you ready to time him?
I am.
Okay, here we go. Here's your question, Dan. Should renters be allowed to make permanent changes like painting walls or put in a TV mount or installing shelves without landlord approval?
Absolutely not. To me, the part of what as a landlord I'm renting is an asset that they take under certain conditions. Now, no, you said without land. Yes, no, nothing like that. Their capacity to paint may not be to the standard that my people will do. When I get something painted, I bring in a professional crew. They know how to cut in and things. If you come in and you're renting a space and you paint one wall hot pink or mauve or something like that, you may not realize how hard it is to cover that. I used to make paint for a living. Those colors are what we call fugitive. So you can paint over top of them and it will bleed through. And then you paint it. So now you've got a greater expense. Also, your
Green.
capacity to paint really well or to do a change, to make sure that when you mount that, you're mounting it to a proper stud, that it's done appropriately so that things won't tear out and damage the wall. I just, for me, it's a hard no. If you're not going to talk to your landlord, you're not allowed to do anything other than, if they allow it, hang a picture with a pin nail. Other than
Yellow.
that, I don't have an opinion. It's a hard no.
Excellent. Well done. Karen, you want to respond?
I agree with Dan. If your tenants were allowed to do it without landlord approval, who knows what they're going to do? The property that I did buy, which had been previously rented out also, in the US, bedrooms were purple,
Oh,
right? So if those had been my tenants and they hadn't asked me, they're losing their full damage deposit because we did have to get professional painters in. And they spent a lot of time redoing those walls to make sure that it wasn't bleeding through. And sometimes when they're choosing colors, it might not, they're choosing it to match their furniture and their property. It might not match what I would want.
mhm.
And there's other changes that they could do that I would have never ever considered. And the cost to remove things or correct them can be horrendous sometimes. So I agree with Dan. It's a hard no. You need the landlord's approval.
Well, that's just it. Is you've got to have communication. I think every question we're answering is all about communication. I mean, and this is no different. You've got to have communication between. And as a rule for all of our rentals, we just did annual maintenance at one of our properties in Paul River, and we had a tenant who said, "Hey, I want to put up blackout curtains. I work on the ferry system, and sometimes I have a graveyard shift, and I would like to put up different curtains, and the holders are different." And he said, "How do you want me to do this?" Well, my maintenance man was doing annual maintenance with me, and I said, "Call him. This will take 15 minutes, and it's worth it for him to do it properly than the tenant to try to screw it up and will probably cause damage to the wall." And so he said, "You really want me to call the maintenance guy?" I said, "Yes, I do. I want you to, because he's got the tools. He knows exactly what's going on, and it'll fit based on the window, not what you think will fit." So as a rule, we don't let tenants do improvements of any kind. And we always say, if you've got a wall mounted TV, which almost all of them do now, please let us hang it for you. Don't just, have you seen the shotgun thing where you've got, oh, they missed the stud and then they move over a centimeter and they miss the stud. And it's like this line. I think, oh my gosh, just let us do it. And then we don't have to recover the drywall. Or I've seen people just leave their TV mounts. They just leave them. And I've seen that too. So I'm agreeing, but it all comes down to communication. Yeah. Good
Yeah.
question. All right. All right. Well, I'll take the next one if you're ready. As you put on your glasses. Okay. Last question under rights and responsibilities. So this one's for me. Should landlords be required to live within a certain distance of their rental properties? Now, this is a very interesting question because I am primarily a remote, self-managing landlord all the time. So I have to add a couple of nuances to this question. It just says, should self-managing landlords be required? It depends on how long you've been a self-managing landlord. It depends on how good your systems are. If you're a landlord that you've hired a property manager and the property manager is the responsible person and is the agent acting for the landlord, then why on earth would it matter if the landlord lived next door or not? But if you're self-managing landlord, I typically live in a different country and certainly different time zones than my rentals most of the time. But does that matter in my case? So I think it depends. That's the answer. Is should landlords be required to live within a certain distance of their rental properties? If you're completely doing everything yourself, you have no help, you have no systems, and that's how you want to run your business, okay. I don't want
Agree.
to run like that. I prefer to empower incredible people who are experts, and we've got a great team. I prefer the team approach. But if you don't want to be a landlord and you hire a property manager, then it shouldn't matter where you are. So I don't know. I would say no, it doesn't matter where the landlords are required to live, but it just depends on how you run your business. I don't know. I have to shake my head because I'm forever a remote landlord. So I don't know if I have the best answer for that because this doesn't really apply to
Yellow.
me. There's my answer. You guys might have a different take on it though.
I, to me, I agree with you simply because just because you're a landlord doesn't make you competent at maintenance. And I can phone a plumber as easily from Timbuktu. Well, maybe Timbuktu doesn't have good reception, but uh, as long as I can phone my local resource and get them out to respond to your needs, then it doesn't matter where the phone call comes from. If I am a landlord who insists on doing all my own maintenance, then I would say, yeah, you need to be able to respond, especially for something like an emergency. If the water pipe bursts and it's flooding, you need to be able to get there fairly quickly. Now, to set a time or a distance really depends on where you live, because in rush hour in Vancouver, a 10-minute trip can take 2 hours. So the fact that you only live a few kilometers or miles away, you may still not be able to get there, but that stands true for your plumber as well.
Mhm.
So response times in bigger centers, difficult also in remote locations like this. If one of my properties is, I live in the city, I live in Powell River, but if I own a property out at the end of the road, which is only 40 minutes away, my maintenance guy may live south of town and take longer than me to get out there. So it's, to me, it's more about making sure that you can respond as quickly as possible rather than some arbitrary, well, you have to live within an hour or you have to live within 20 miles.
Karen, what's your take?
I agree. As long as you have the proper resources, why do you need to live close to the property? So
Hmm.
if you have, you know who the good plumber is, you know who the good electrician is, the good handyman, and you have a relationship with them that if you call them, they're going to respond in a reasonable amount of time, then why do you have to live there?
Hmm.
And personally, I'm not really good at maintenance. So if I chose to buy the place next door and say, you know what, I'm your landlord. If you need anything, let me know. And they come and say, oh, this is broken. I don't know what to do.
Hmm.
Right. So the fact that I'm living next door doesn't mean that they're going to get proper service. You need to have those resources that are close by, not the landlord.
Because I've done so many location specific episodes, I've done Hawaii, and of course, I have rentals in Hawaii, so I know Hawaii really well. But I'm also in this upcoming tranche of location specific episodes is Alaska, and you have all these rural areas, and in Hawaii you have different islands. And actually, in the Hawaii Landlord Tenant Code, it specifically says that if you are a landlord with a rental on one island, you have to have a responsible agent of some kind, doesn't say licensed person, but somebody on the same island to be the contact for the tenant so that they're not trying to call New York from Maui
Yeah.
trying to fix a plumbing problem. So it's really interesting how different places have actually added that. And Alaska has something similar. It's not quite that spelled out because, you know, it's so big, but it's still so rural. Interesting take. Dan, you had something?
Yeah, as a tenant, one of the first, when we do the walkthrough, I ask, where's the water shut off?
Mm,
Where's my electrical panel? Where's the gas shut off? I want to know that because with electrical, I may not be able to be with certain situations. I may have to leave, and I don't want my stuff ruined.
yeah.
I like my belongings. So to protect myself, I want to know where the water shutoff is. I want to know where power and gas are. And I want to make sure that I've got the capacity to turn those valves. So with gas, you got to have a wrench
Mm,
and be able to go over and turn that valve. With water, there should be a tap you can shut off. And if that tap isn't where the problem is, then I'm going to phone the city.
hmm.
Their guys are going to come out. But that's one of the things as a tenant to protect myself. As a landlord, when I'm walking people through, I show them those things.
You know, that's actually really smart. I've never thought about doing that.
Mm.
But that's, and there are different tenants that have different skill sets. Not everybody I would be okay with shutting the gas off or shutting, you know, opening a breaker or anything like that. Certain people that maybe that's their trade. Maybe that's what they do and they're fine with it and they would be okay. They just need to know the location. So I agree with you. And I think that's really prudent, especially Dan, you're a very able person and you've done lots of renovations. So that would occur to you, but I'm not sure that that would apply to every tenant in every situation. Yeah, interesting. Really interesting. Anything else about which system or where rights and responsibilities? Anything else that we should talk about in rights and responsibilities before we wrap it up?
Hmm.
Yeah, we'll do it in another. There's lots. Yeah.
Well, so this
So
is
in
go ahead.
podcast one, I think it was podcast one,
Yeah.
you talked, you started the mantra of know the local codes. And that is one of the biggest drivers for rights and responsibilities is
Hmm.
what does your state, city, province, country say? They will tell you this is your responsibility, this is not. And
Hmm.
the rest of it, negotiate it.
Yeah. Very interesting. And if there's ever a question, there's always someone to call. And that's one of the reasons why I'm doing so many location specific podcasts is so that people can go, like I'm about to record the one for Saskatchewan today. Well, okay, how do I, if I've got a problem in Saskatchewan, who do I call? Well, there you go. At least it's a running start. So, well, I've so enjoyed having both of you on the shows. And this is only part two. And I know we're going to have parts three and probably beyond just because we have great discussion and we're doing it table topic style, which is super fun. I love that. I love that we did the timer, even though it was kind of wonky with you, Dan. I think that was really funny.
I'll
Um,
look in.
yeah, but so tell me, either of you, if a listener is interested in learning more about Toastmasters or joining the Money Matters Toastmasters Club, how would they do that?
I'll let you do it this time, Dan.
Okay, well, for Toastmasters, we are a global organization. And I looked it up while we were on break, and there are currently 15,800 clubs globally.
Wow.
That's hundreds of thousands of members. There is a club near you. And if there isn't, there are clubs like Money Matters, the one that Karen and I belong to, that is a virtual club. It's online. So with Toastmasters, you can go type in Toastmasters International. That'll take you to a website. On that website, it says, find a club near me. You click on that, put in your zip code, postal code, address, whatever you want. Tell them how many miles or kilometers you want to know. So some people are using transit. They want it within 5 kilometers or 3 miles of their space. And some people are okay driving an hour and a half once a month, depending on the frequency. Then you go in and you will learn about the clubs. You can click on each club. It'll tell you when do they meet, where do they meet, how long is the meeting, who's the contact, and so on. And the format that the meeting's in. So it may be online only, it may be in person only, it may be hybrid, which is online and in person. And all that kind of information. You'll also find that there are clubs like Money Matters that are topic specific, and there are some clubs that are called community clubs, and they're just come and talk about whatever you want. With Toastmasters, there is a training regime that you can sign up for called Pathways, and it gives you multiple curriculums that you can work through where you're really in control of what you're going to learn, how fast you want to work at it, and there's a support network there to help you self-educate on developing leadership skills and becoming a comfortable speaker. I'm complete.
Karen, any parting thoughts?
And for Money Matters, all you have to do is to go into Google or whatever search engine you use, type in Money Matters Toastmaster. That will bring you up the information for our club, which meets twice a month for an hour and a half. And we have a lot of fun discussing anything about money. We have a different topic every meeting.
And we meet on Mondays and we meet at 6:30. So Karen, I will see you in 3 hours.
Yes.
Thank you both so much. I can't wait for part 3. This has been really fun so far.
Thank you.
Take care.